Oh, many people and families tell fibs. I tell the old ones as well.
We all do.
Mine did, and my family did anyway. That's my granddad in the picture. Can you all see the picture? Well, that's my granddad, Charles Thornton, it was called. Let me say right from the start, I do not know who was telling the fibs, but I'm almost certain Granddad told the odd ones. Some of these fibs have been passed down from generation to generations, and some fibs were told to hide reality, and some told for what at the time was thought good reasons. However, the main thing, as far as I'm concerned, they held my research up for absolutely ages. In the beginning, the story starts in 1977, when Pauline and I first took family history up. We started with an interview with my mum, and this is a transcript of it. You can see the various details here. I'm going to start effectively at the bottom. It says one son, Charles, born 17th of November 1893 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, and was sent back to live in Liverpool by himself at the age of 18 months. Brought up by grandmother and spinster aunts. And now the rest of it doesn't matter. His father was another Charles, right? He was in the army. He married Elizabeth Beattie of Dublin, possibly in Dublin. He was a sergeant in the army and was killed fighting a forest fire in Saskatoon. His wife, Elizabeth, not from the forest fire, but for whatever reason, died a year or two later. And then Grandad was sent over. I mentioned about Elizabeth Beattie having some late link to the Lord Mayor of London. I have looked in Dublin. I have looked at it, and lo and behold, I haven't found any link there. But I'm not going to talk about that tonight, so I'll pass that over. His father was another Charles Thornton in the army. He was in charge of the Heavy Brigade at Balaclava in the Crimea. His widow lived in Mossley Hill, Liverpool, and she died about 1920. Now, my mum was born in 1922, so she never met that day. Or Charles Thornton, who died in 1905, well, she never met him either, but she did meet the brothers and sisters. But I'm going to come back to that later. Grandad married my grandma in Scotland, so it's a Scottish certificate, so it's got a little bit more detail. But it confirms a bit of what my mum told me, that Charles Thornton was a sergeant in the army and was deceased. And Elizabeth Thornton, maiden surname Beattie, was also deceased. That matched what my mother told. Sorry. Right, I also got my granddad's naval record. It's only Grandad, that picture there. He's in the Royal Navy, but he was born on the 17th of November, 1893. And he was born in Saskatchewan, Canada. In all fits. He's an errand boy as well. Now, another piece I'd inherited from my mum were 3 photographs. The first one there was this one. So this is my granddad's. And by the way, I'm going to say Grandad all the way through because all these Charleses make it very, very confusing. So there's my granddad's grandmother, and their daughters. They had sons as well, but daughters. Fair enough. It was these daughters that my mother met, but she didn't meet them a lot, and they weren't, you know, she couldn't remember the names properly. So they're a bit of a blank. We had some ideas of name. One of them was an Elizabeth. Other than that, really, we didn't know. There was a Grace, which we'll come to. Excuse me, a bit like off, and I forgot to bring a hanky with them. But anyway, my granddad, there we are. Now, there was a bit of family history associated with him, if you remember. He was in the Crimea. And we went to a family history fair, and there was a military expert there who was an expert in the Crimea. So I asked him to try and identify the photograph. Indeed, it is the uniform of a heavy dragoon in the Crimea War. Yeah, that's no story. This is a story. The photograph we've got is of Grandad with his cousin Grace. Grace is a little bit younger than Grandad, and I've been told that there was, and probably mentioned it earlier, that there was a Grace amongst the brothers and sisters of my great-granddad, who was a camp follower. Well, this is not a camp follower. She's the wrong generation. But
your mother's description.
yes. So here we are, a family tree. I always like family trees. Siblings of the middle Charles, right, are not shown on the diagram because at that stage I didn't really know the names, so I left them out. But everything seems to fit together. So the first place to start looking is in Canada for the birth of my granddad. And I searched between 1892 and 1897 with no luck. I contacted several societies in Canada and asked for their assistance without any luck. I looked at the British Armed Forces overseas, births, baptisms, in your office births, baptisms, Irish births, nothing. No luck at all. I searched repeatedly, year after year, and found nothing. I also searched for the marriage of Charles Thornton Sr., the Crimea chappie, and his wife. And I couldn't find them. I looked in, I didn't have much to go on, but I couldn't find them. I looked for Charles Thornton and Elizabeth Beattie. I looked in the records for Ireland, Canada, and the UK, and found no such marriage. I've been looking since 1977. Nothing. I'll not tell you the many blind alleys, but I have brought a couple of examples up. This is a Charles Thornton, Mary Ann and Elizabeth, and a Charles E. as a son. He's the right age to be my great-granddad, not my granddad, my great-granddad. So that fits. If you have a look, the wife, Mary Ann, is born in Canada. The first child is born in Quebec. Charles E. is born in Malta. Oh, it sounds good, but it wasn't. I was quite able to prove that that wasn't the right family. So, move on to another one. This one initially looked a bit good. Here we have a Charles Thornton. It's down, I don't know if you can see my mouse on your screens, but it's down towards the bottom. Charles Thornton with Lydia, his wife. And Charles son. That Charles is about the right age for my granddad. Great. But his dad's still alive, not burnt in a forest fire. I really got onto this painter, but he painted houses, so it wasn't as you might think. So it's the wrong one, definitely the wrong one. What happened next was another visit to a family history fair. I thought I'd have a look at Charles from Crimea. And I had a word with an expert on the Crimean Wars, and he said he would write back to me, and he wrote back to me a few days later, and he couldn't find any Charles Thornton in any at all in Crimea, no matter what forces they were in, none at all. But he had found a John, and John was in the charge of the Heavy Brigade. That fits. Should I have been looking for John all the way along? Well, and now I had a leave to start looking in Liverpool. So I went to the 1891 census. Now this is before my granddad was born, so I wouldn't find him. And by the way, this was the only census at the time that was available to me. And lo and behold, we have a family, and it seems to fit. John is about 12 years older than his wife, and he's a pensioner, which is usually a good indication that he was in the army. One of the children was a Mary who was training to be a teacher. It's with the mother's story. And all of the children, except the youngest, were born in Ireland. Interestingly, Elizabeth's wife was born in Bermuda, in the West Indies. I also show at the bottom the second family that was living in the same house, as a different household though. And the wife of James McClellan was an Ada E, and subsequent research shows that was her daughter. So this is where they lived. And this house here, and you can see it's quite a nice house, and it's got a cellar. That's where James McClellan and his wife Ada will have lived almost certainly. And the rest of the household lived up here. Right. It's a long way from proving any connection, but it's worth waiting to the 1901 census. Here we are. John is living on his own means this time. Two of the daughters are now teachers, which fits and matches with what I was told, but no sign of Grandad. But as I've mentioned to people many times, when your family's at the bottom of a sheet, always check the next sheet. There's a blank line there, but check the next sheet. And lo and behold, there is Charles Thornton, grandson, 5 years old. That's a bit awry. If he was, that would take him to 1896, and I was told 1893. Well, we'll see. But the biggest difference, he was born in Birmingham. Not the right place at all. So, where do we go from here? Well, that. Oh, sorry. It didn't work. That is where. Oh, no. Oh, I don't know what's happened there. Just excuse me, let me go back. Right. I thought it looked wrong. It's worth further research. It'd be another 10 years before I could look at 1911. This is stretching the job out a long way. But I've got plenty of other lines to look at. But I could look in Birmingham, so I did. And since the date of birth was in doubt, I looked for a range of years, 1891 to 1898 I looked. It was also worth looking for a bit wider than Birmingham, so I looked at Warwickshire and adjacent counties, and I turned up 9 plain Charles Thorntons and 17 Charles Thorntons with a middle name in there as well. Some of the duplicates. I worked through these and eliminated most of them. All I needed to do was find the family in the census in the 1901, and if they weren't in Liverpool, it's not proof that, but it's likely they weren't the right family. And various other checks I was able to do, and I was able to knock the vast majority of those out. Another line to follow was John Thornton, wife and children. I found him in 1881, 1891, and 1901 census. And he had 7 children, and all but the one were born, and all but the last one were born in Dublin. But there's no Charles. There was an Emily, by the way, was missing, but that was calculated from census data. I found that Vital Records was a brilliant source. You know, it was an LDS one, on CD, very, very good source. But Family Search helped as well. And again, we're talking a few years back now. Next thing to try, just look for John Thornton and Elizabeth's marriage. It was a shock. It was a Vital Record index, as I mentioned, for, on CD by the LDS, which broke it. And there we are. John Thornton was married to an Elizabeth Beattie in Dublin on the in 1860. Elizabeth Beattie. Now this is not her granddad's parents' marriage, but his grandparents' marriage. Well, that's an odd, isn't it? His grandparents and his grandmother's name and his mother's name being the same. It's unlikely that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's unlikely. Subsequently, I found an Irish genealogy, this certificate, and lo and behold, he's a corporal in the Royal Engineers. He's at the church is St. Bridget's, and he's at Bridge Street Barracks. Yeah. So that's the church, and that's the barracks, still there. Could this be a first fib I've exposed, or is it an error? Or perhaps a coincidence that there were 2 Elizabeth Beatties? We'll try and find out here. The next one I came across was very, very helpful as well. By now, the actual odds of being the right family are looking a lot better. But I need more proof. I like lots of proof to say something is right. So it's worth looking at the family in greater detail. That'd be one of John Thornton and Elizabeth Beattie's children. Could they be the parents of Grandad? I looked at that. I'll come back to that actually. I looked at that though. It was the research into Richard Thornton which gave me the next big clue. Richard Thornton had married Hannah Grace Waters in 1899 in Southport. Their first born was Marjorie in 1900, but the second one, and I've got an image too early, but the second one was Grace. Grace was this child. So that is now looking good as far as I'm concerned. According to the naval record, Grandad was born in the 17th of November 1893, and Grace was born the 10th of November 1902, a difference in age of 9 years, a few days. I don't see there's 9 years difference in age of those. Perhaps the 1901 census was more correct. That would make 6 years difference. It's still a tall order, but it's a lot better than the first one. So that early birth, 1893, is almost certainly a fib. Moving on. Where are we up to? Date of birth, unknown. Place of birth, unknown. Name of mother, unknown. Name of father, unknown. 1977 to 2001, it was still all unknown. So what do? We carry on searching. The next breakthrough came at looking at another of John and Elizabeth's children. Ada Elizabeth Thornton married James McClelland in 1886. In 1901, the household was as follows. So we have James McClelland, Ada, and by the way, it's Ada Elizabeth, and I mentioned your mother mentioned that one of the ladies was an Elizabeth, and 2 children. Again, it's at the bottom of the sheet, always turn over. And there we have the final clincher. Charles Thornton, brother-in-law. Wow, age 40, pensioner, been in the army, right? And he's born in Ireland. Why was he not with his son? He was supposed to be in Canada, dead. The obvious question arises, was where Charles William, as it turns out, Thornton was in 1911. It'd be another 10 years before I could see that. But first, where was Grandad in 1911? Well, Grandad was in the Royal Navy, and this confirms what was written on the service sheet. His age is given at 17, which should suggest the year of 1894, and a place of birth in Canada. Big questions marked about both of those now. No wonder I did all that searching in Canada and didn't find out. Is it 1893 or 1894 or 1896? Is it Saskatoon or Birmingham? Granddad joined the Navy in 1909. That means he was in 1896, using the 1896 date, he was 13 years old when he joined the Navy. He's running away, isn't he? Run away to join the Navy. Didn't join the Army, he joins the Navy. So I think we've exposed a great fib there, which was probably Grandad's fib. Where was Charles Thornton in 1911? His father. Well, he was here. This is The workhouse at West Union Road, Rice Lane, Morton Hill. It consists of all you can see on that photograph and much more. It goes off to the right and way back. It covered 37 acres. Massive place. One of many workhouses in Liverpool. In the 1901 census, we find him there. 1911 census, we find him there. Right. It's not known what part he was in or why he was there, but he was there. He was, you can see at Charles Thornton, age 50, widower. He has been married. He's a van driver for a delivery company, and he's an army pensioner. He's in Dublin. It fits. So where do we go from here? Two routes. His army record will be a good place to start. And then other workhouse records. Now, I've found other members of the family in the early Victorian and Georgian military records, but not Charles William Thornton. I found plenty of plain Charles Thorntons, but none of them fitted. The only one that came close to fitting was in the Royal Navy. I searched and searched for 18 years and discovered nought. Was he in the army? He must have been, because when you went into the workhouse and you had a pension, they took the pension off you. So he must have been in the army. Why can't I find him? About 5 years ago, by my past, put the Liverpool Workhouse Records online, and Manchester and other places as well. William Charles Thornton appears in these records many times. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a year, from 1898 to 1920. The records stop in 1920, not because he wasn't there, but because of the 100-year closure rule. Here is a carter. Well, that fits in a way. He's got epilepsy. There is, so he's not there as a pauper. He's there because he's ill. Right. But they got the dates he was admitted and where he was living before he goes in. But the main clue that this is the right man is there is the next of kin is said to be Mrs. McClelland, his sister. That fits. Remember McClelland, the other family in that household that was next door to his grandparents. So his home for many years looked like this. For example, in 1898, he's in the medical ward of Mill Road Hospital. That's what this place is in Derby, West Derby. His first time that he appears in the records is omitted with something, unfortunately, it's difficult to read. Looks like RHEUM, but it's right on the curve of the book, and the image is unreadable for the rest of it. He's in for 6 weeks and discharged to Woolton Convalescent Home. This suggests it's not for something trivial. Again, his occupation is van driver, formerly in the army. His next of kin is his sister, Ada McClelland. And this is Woolton Convalescent Home. It still exists. He's discharged there back to Mill Road Hospital where he stays for a further 6 days. On his discharge, it is described as improved. Most visits appear to be for medical reasons, but occasionally visits were questionable. Once he was brought in by a policeman, and a note appended that the police station had to be notified when he was discharged. But on the whole, I felt sorry for him. So why was there no contact with his son? Oh, excuse me, I've done something wrong at my end. Why the lie about Canada with forest fires and deaths, etc.? Who started that lie? Was it Grandad or was it his great-granddad? Sorry, his granddad's granddad. In these records is sometimes a widower and sometimes single, not signal. Which was it? Was he ever married? An army record really helped to find things out, and especially where he was in Canada. Yippee! I found an army record! 5 weeks ago, and literally 5 weeks ago, I found it. It'd been there all the time, but incorrectly indexed by National Archives, Ancestry, Fold 3, and Find My Past. But it'd been there all the time. How do I know it's the correct man? Well, the age is about correct. The name is correct. The place of birth is correct. St. Bridget's, they're mentioned there. The next of kin is mentioned, his father in the Coast Brigade Royal Artillery. That is correct, exactly correct. His brother is mentioned as John, which is correct. Another brother is mentioned as Richard. That is correct. It all fits. This is the same man. He says, not seen the text. Right. So where was he in Canada when he was posted? Let's have a look. Well, since when has India been part of the provinces of Canada? The first few years he was at home, and he was not 18 until 1878. Then 8 years in India. In 1898 he's out of the army.
1889.
Sorry, 1889. It's just people that know me know I get things wrong all the time. Right, so Canada, no. Here we are. What did he do? Well, he had somewhat of an up and down career. He was a boy soldier and a boy soldier. Then he was mustered. I presume that means appointed as driver. Oh no! Look at that. He's awaiting trial. Tried and dealt with by the civil powers and imprisoned for 2 months. No idea what for. But he'd been a naughty lad. But then he's still a driver. They haven't demoted him. So then he's promoted to acting bombardier. And then he's acting bombardier again. They've been promoted to bombardier. Bombardier, I think it's like corporal, isn't it? Something like that. So, oh no. He's awaiting trial again. Tried and reduced. Naughty lad, this one. And again. This time he's in prison for 13 days. And then he's discharged at Woolwich. But if you have a look at that bottom entry, there's something written in red. Let's have a look at that one. Now this is difficult to read, but it's another uh-oh. Improperly listed into the Royal Navy as second-class stoker. And there's something I can't quite make out. HMS Valage, Portsmouth. So, right, let's go on. Was he ill in India? Well, yes, he was.
Oh dear.
His first one, before he got to India, uh-oh.
Naughty boy.
Right. The first entry is before he went to India, as I say, and 3 months later, he was on trial. Was that related, do you think, somehow? After he got out, he went and bashed somebody. I wonder. Then a proper medical one. Palpitations. 19 days in hospital. He got heart tonic. Climate, it says. And then 50 days dysentery. Ooh. Makes you shudder, that, doesn't it? So, and then, oh.
Naughty boy again.
Yeah, he got infected again. And then, the vast majority of his time, and this happened time and time and time again, he's listed down as with ague. Now, ague is basically a fever with hot and cold sweats and shivering. But the treatment gives you a clue of what it might be, quinine. And so I read that as malaria. And he's down with it time and time and time again. 10% of his time in the army, he's in hospital, which is a good chunk of time. But what about the Navy? Remember, I mentioned there was one person who nearly fitted. Let's have a look at that properly. So we're back and have a look at that properly. Charles Thornton, 1865, fits, nearly fits anyway. Right, Dublin, Ireland, correct. Place of, the colour of hair and etc. That's pretty well correct. He joined the Navy 9 months after leaving the army. He was a stoker, that fits. And the reason he gets chucked out of the Navy is that he joined the I'm just going to change something. He was serving. They discovered he was in the army, so they clicked and got rid of him. It's the same man as that. So I've got his army record and naval record. Moving on. Right. Did Charles William live to 1939 for the registration? Well, he did. He was here. This is Kirkdale Homes for the elderly and infirm. Here he is. Could this be the start of lying problems that I see? I look closely and I look at his date of birth, and that is 4 months and 26 days before his parents were married. These are my thoughts to present. They're only guesses, these. They're not supported by evidence at the moment, but Victorian morals as they are, I think Charles William, the Army Navy man, his parents took him in, but I think there was something about it which held him back in some way, and the life didn't work out well for him. His parents, I can't find his christening, his baptism, or his birth. It's still a mystery as truly who his parents are. He left home early to join the army and possibly poor brought a bad army career and probably upset his father and made things worse. He tries to get away from things by telling lies to join the Royal Navy. His ill health compounds things and soon he is institutionalized. At some stage, he gains a son, but I don't think he was capable of being a single parent. So Grandad was dumped onto John and Elizabeth. The grandfather, this is my grandfather's grandfather, dies in 1905, and my grandfather and probably Grace have an unhappy life, and both try to get away from home as soon as possible. My granddad joins the Navy, saying he's 16 years while he's only 13. He does that to get away from home. Who started the story about his parents is unknown. And the link to Canada is unknown. In 1939, Charles William is 81 years old. My granddad's father, as far as I know, knew none of his grandchildren. They didn't know of his existence. They probably never met him, but they lived in the same area. That is sad. The repercussions of that initial lie are still being felt today. Well, it won't change. The section of Kirkland Homes where he was living, as far as I can discover, dealt with senile patients. What a rotten life he had. Some of which was self-inflicted, admittedly. You might think he ended up in poverty, but not so. He did not write a will, but the probate says the value of his estate was £533, 2 shillings and 10 pence. In 1941, when he died, you could nearly buy a house for that. Who got that money? I don't know. John, his brother, was executor. Did Grandad get any of it? We don't know. So where are we up to? Date of birth, unknown. Place of birth, unknown. Name of mother. No, this is my granddad.
This is Granddad, sorry.
Yeah. Name of mother, unknown. Name of father, unknown. Between 1977 and 2020, all are still unknown. So what do? We carry on searching. Grandad got married and had a good, happy life with 7 children, and they adopted a further 2. I'll eventually solve the problems with Grandad, but in the meantime, that is not Grandma's name. And those are not her parents. But that's another story.